Welcome to the Republican Professor. I'm my own host, Dr. Lucas J. Mather. It's Thanksgiving Day, 2025 years after Jesus. It's Thursday, 27 November, 2025. This is our last day here for Thanksgiving. We leave tomorrow. We're in the backyard. We got the waterfall and the pool light on. Let me give you a overview there. You see? There you go. Okay. 12 years ago, I was sitting right there, almost to the day. Got a call from the hospital saying that I might want to come out to Colorado. My mom died 2 days later, 27 November 2013. And I was right in that hot tub there when I got the call. I think it was Sunday night. She died Wednesday. I was able to see her and briefly speak with her before she died. And so this is the anniversary of my mom's death, even though ordinarily she died the day before Thanksgiving, not on Thanksgiving, but in terms of the calendar, she died on the 27th. So it would be the anniversary as far as the calendar goes. It's hard to know how to judge the anniversary because I think of it as the day before Thanksgiving, even though it was a Wednesday, but it was the 27th of November. And that was 12 years ago, and I think about the house that my mom lost that I grew up in. I think of the time I was in that house from kindergarten to the Navy, right out of high school. And then when I was in seminary, we had about 3 years there when I was at Denver Seminary to visit, regularly, almost every day. From 12 years ago, I was sitting in that hot tub, got the call. Sitting in that hot tub right over there. Can't see it because it's not lit up, but right next to the pool. Flows into the pool in the morning. And that was as long as from first grade to 12th grade. That's as long ago as that was. And when I think of it in those terms, it's startling to me. It's a little startling. Well, anyway, I got an Oliva 5. It's a small one today. And Streams in the Desert. Let's do Streams in the Desert January 20th. We're going to finish reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers, the introductory chapter. We got a few more pages there. And then I got to get back inside and watch Thanksgiving-ish shows. We already watched Trains, Planes, and Automobiles today. And we're finishing Spy Game with Robert Redford and Pad Britt. Okay, January 20th, I believe we're on. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance of the heart is made better. Ecclesiastes 7:3. When sorrow comes under power of divine grace, it works out a manifold ministry in our lives. Sorrow reveals unknown depths of the soul and unknown capabilities of experience and service. Gay, trifling people are always shallow and never suspect the little meannesses in their nature. Sorrow is God's plowshare that turns up and subsoils the depths of the soul, that it may yield richer harvests. If we had never fallen or were in a glorified state, then the strong torrents of divine joy would be the normal force to open up all our soul's capacities. But in a fallen world, sorrow, with despair taken out of it, is the chosen power to reveal ourselves to ourselves. Hence, it is sorrow that makes us think deeply, long, and soberly. Sorrow makes us go slower and more considerately, and introspect our motives and dispositions. It is sorrow that opens up within us the capacities of the heavenly life, and it is sorrow that makes us willing to launch our capacities on a boundless sea of service for God and our fellows. We may suppose a class of indolent people living at the base of a great mountain range who had never ventured to explore the valleys and canyons back in the mountains, and someday, when a great thunderstorm goes careening through the mountains, it turns the hidden glens into echoing trumpets and reveals the inner recesses of the valley, like the convolutions of a monster shell. And then the dwellers at the foot of the hills are astonished at the labyrinths and the unexplored recesses of the region so nearby, yet so little known. So it is with many souls who indolently live on the outer edge of their own natures until great thunderstorms of sorrow reveal hidden depths within that were never hitherto suspected. God never uses anybody to a large degree until after he breaks that one all to pieces. Joseph had more sorrow than all of the other sons of Jacob, and it led him out into a ministry of bread for all nations. For this reason, the Holy Spirit said of him, Joseph is a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. It takes sorrow to widen the soul. This is a good one for the anniversary of Mom's death, wouldn't you say? I didn't plan it that way. It's just the way it worked out. January 19th was the last one that we read. Okay, let's keep going. It's a long one today. The dark brown molds upturned by the sharp-pointed plow, and I've a lesson learned. My life is but a field stretched out beneath God's sky, some harvest rich to yield. Where grows the golden grain? Where faith? Where sympathy? In a furrow cut by pain. Maltby Babcock. Every person in every nation must take lessons in God's school of adversity. We can say, blessed is night, for it reveals to us the stars. In the same way we can say, blessed is sorrow, for it reveals God's comfort. The floods washed away home and mill, all the poor man had in the world. But as he stood on the scene of his loss after the water had subsided, broken-hearted and discouraged, he saw something shining in the bank, which the waters had washed bare. It looks like gold, he said. It was gold. The flood had beggared him, which had beggared him, had made him rich. So oftentimes in life. H.C. Trumbull. Streams in the Desert, January 20th. Kalman Publications, Los Feliz Station, Los Angeles, California, 1925. Moment of reflection. All right, kids. Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers. We're on page 15. We're going to finish this. We're going to make a fair use of this, do a transformative reading. We'd like to thank Oxford University Press for making this material available. I'd like to thank Daniel L. Dreisbach for writing it. It's called Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers, Oxford University Press. I got the hardcover. I highly recommend you get this book. Get it. Get it and love it. Learn to love it. You land lovers. And let's continue from page 15 to 19. We're on the bottom, page 15. The Bible in the Political Culture of the American Founding. As a student of religion and politics in the founding era, Daniel Dreisbach says, I spend many hours in musty archives reading 18th century political documents, tracts, sermons, and the like. I have been struck by several biblical passages frequently cited in this literature or that were favorites of influential founders. What is it about these texts that this generation of Americans found so pertinent? I'm on page 16 at the top. So vital to their own time and place. What does the founders' recurrence to these scriptural passages reveal about their worldview, their worldviews and political thoughts, especially their perspectives on the place of faith in public life and the prudential relationship between religion and the civil state? These are some of the questions that prompted me to write this book. This study examines the place of the Bible in the political discourse of the founding era, drawing on state papers, pamphlets, newspapers, political sermons, and private writings of the period. This book identifies selected biblical passages frequently referenced in this literature. These texts are examined in their biblical contexts as well as in the historical, political, and literary context in which 18th century Americans used them. Of special interest is the question why these scriptural texts appealed to the founding generation. These references to Bible are examined to determine whether they were used in a manner consistent with my wife is smiling at me. Sorry. Whenever you have your wife smiling at you on a Thanksgiving, I don't know about you, but I can't help but smile back. Totally lost my train of thought there. I lost my... where was I? These texts are examined in their biblical context as well as in the historical, political, and literary context in which 18th century Americans used them. Of special interest is the question why these scriptural texts appealed to the founding generation. These references to the Bible are examined to determine whether they were used in a manner consistent with their biblical context, or whether these texts were removed from their original context for some immediate political or rhetorical advantage. Gulp. I guess I should No one wants to hear you gulping. All right, let's keep going. The goal of this book is to combine credible historical research and careful textual analysis with basic biblical scholarship and political theory. That's quite a hefty goal, man. Wow. The 3 chapters in part 1 consider, respectively, the Bible's influence on public culture, the place of the Bible in the lives of the founders, and how the founders used the Bible in political discourse. The first of these chapters surveys the Bible's impact on the public culture of the colonial and early national periods, giving special attention to how the English Bible, especially King James Version, influenced linguistic development, literacy education, education more generally, and public law. The second examines the Bible's place in the lives of the founders, what they said about the Bible, how it shaped their education, how it inspired various Bible projects, including the establishment of Bible societies, and how the Bible framed their views on politics and civil government. Dreisbach continues. Okay. Make sure you get a copy and read along, as I would like to do some more in this. I'm doing this introduction chapter during Thanksgiving because I think it's really a special time for that. Okay. Okay. Drawing on some of the most familiar political rhetoric of the times, the third and final chapter in part 1 examines the founders' diverse. There's that word again. That's something's happening to my brain. Something is happening to my brain. Oh, I would love to get your application in your diversity statement. Oh, I would love that. I would love to have you inflate grades and do some Democrat indoctrination and grade inflation plantation, a taxpayer expense for this college. I would. Oh, whoa. What just happened? I was just here. Where was I? I don't know what happened, guys. Part 1 examines the founders' diverse. No. Fighting that. Okay. I think I won. Uses of the Bible in political discourse, ranging from the strictly literary and cultural to the profoundly theological. Each chapter in part 2 profiles a specific biblical text or thematically related texts popular in the literature of the era, and meditates on the lessons that can be learned from both the biblical texts and the founders' use of these texts. Among the biblical texts and topics examined are covenant lawsuit texts, such as Micah 6, 1 through 8, that explicate the covenant relationship between God and a righteous nation. Various texts, such as Acts 5:29, that were interpreted to authorize resistance to tyrannical civil magistrates, notwithstanding familiar biblical injunctions to submit to civil authorities. For example, Romans 13, 1 through 2. Covenant nation texts, such as Proverbs 14:34, that promise divine blessings for righteous nations. Various texts, including Proverbs 29:2 and Exodus 18:21, that set forth the necessity for and standards of godly civil magistrates. Selected texts such as Galatians 5:1 and 2 Corinthians 3:17 that invoke the language of liberty and were appropriated by patriotic Americans to express their aspirations for political liberty. This is all one sentence, by the way, separated by semicolons. Happy Thanksgiving. And George Washington's favorite biblical phrase, the ancient Hebrew blessing and prophetic vision found in Micah 4:4 and other Old Testament texts, in which every man sits in safety under his vine and under his fig tree. We're on page 17. Finally, interspersed among the chapters in Part 2 are short vignettes I have called The Bible in American History, which describes episodes in the founding era framed by the Bible or specific biblical texts. These brief narratives include an account of the first prayer in the Continental Congress, Benjamin Franklin's impassioned plea for prayer in the Constitutional Convention, and George Washington's use of the Bible as the first presidential inaugural ceremony. This book illustrates that the Bible was featured prominently in the political discourse of the American founding. Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers, Daniel L. Dreisbach, Backwoods Bible Press. Oxford University Press. Daniel L. Dreisbach is a professor in the Department of Justice, Law, and Criminology at American University in Washington, D.C. He received a Doctor of Philosophy degree from Oxford University, where he studied as a Rhodes Scholar, and a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Virginia. He has written extensively on the intersection of religion and politics and law in the American founding. Back to page 17. It was a widely respected and referenced text, although some well-known skeptical founders questioned its divine origins or the authenticity of the text transmitted through the centuries. The Bible shaped significant aspects of public culture, including language, letters, arts, and education, and law, and it left its mark on the lives of individual founders. It was also thought to offer insights into basic and enduring questions of political theory, such as what is the role of civil government? What are the liberties and civic responsibilities of citizens? And do citizens have the right to resist tyrannical rule? The Bible informed the way many late 18th century Americans thought about human nature, civic virtue, social order, political authority, the rights and duties of citizens, and other ideas vital to the establishment of a political society. And take a drink of water. Trying to stay hydrated here. Okay. The many Americans in this generation thought the Bible was essential for nurturing the civic virtues that give citizens the capacity for self-government. The political discourse of the age, both spoken and written, is replete with quotations from and allusions to the Bible, and with language that resembles, imitates, or evokes the distinctive intonations of the King James Bible. The founders turned to the Bible for literary, rhetorical, and political reasons, in addition to religious reasons. For a well-rounded understanding of the ideas that informed the American founding, these biblical influences must be studied alongside Republican Enlightenment, so-called, and British constitutional and other intellectual influences. How are you guys doing? We're at page 18 at the top, and we have about a page and a half to go. We're cruising through. It's going to be a much shorter episode tonight because it is Thanksgiving. Page 18 at the top. This book invites the reader to join the founders in reading the Bible and considering its relevance to the political and legal crises they encountered. Accordingly, biblical texts in the founders' discourse are highlighted and referenced even when the founders quoted from or alluded to the Bible without citations. Because the book focuses on the founding generation's use and interpretations of the Bible, I have thought it better to let the founders speak for themselves rather than for me to tell the reader what the founders said or thought. Makes sense to me, Dan. Makes a lot of sense to me. We're doing a transformative reading, a fair use of Daniel Dreisbach's Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers. And Bob Jones University Press. Jim Baker's outfit. No, just kidding. It's Oxford University Press. Jimmy Swaggart is on the editorial board, one of the referees. No, you don't believe me? Okay. No, I was kidding. All right. Well, not to bring up health food, but let us continue. For this reason, I have relied on direct quotations from the founders and sometimes multiple quotations on the same point when dealing with contested subject matter, and I have erred on the side of providing too much rather than too little of a quotation so the reader can assess the founders' words in context. When quoting the founders, I have in most instances retained the founders' archaic and idiosyncratic spelling, capitalization, and punctuation. Direct quotations are supported by citations to primary sources or other reputable scholarship. Let me say what this book is not about. This book does not make claims about the interior faith commitments of the Founding Fathers. Although it is certainly true that many were devout Christians, it is also true that some influential founders were skeptical of the central claims of Christianity. Yeah, true. Yeah. There's a footnote there. There's actually an endnote. I'm going to go back to it and just take a look at it. I don't like endnotes. I already said I don't like them. I like footnotes. Please give me footnotes or give me death. That's a quote from Patrick Henry. Let's see here. M.E. Bradford, Dreisbach, Mark D. Hall. Oh. Mark D. Hall a few times. Several times. David L. Holmes. What's up, David L. Holmes? Vincent Philip Munoz. Had him on the podcast. Another student of Michael Ullman. All right. I'm just checking. Okay, buddy. Let's keep going. The central claim or thesis of this book is not that America is a Christian nation. Whether America is or ever was a Christian nation is an important, complex question that merits scrutiny, but it is not the subject of this study. The book, however, offers, however, insights into the questions whether individual founders were Orthodox Christian or whether America was, in some sense, a Christian nation. There was a variety of intellectual, political, and legal influences, apart from the Bible, that informed the American founding. Among the influences scholars have identified and studied are Hebraic, classical, and civic Republican, Protestant, British Enlightenment, including the Lockean liberal and Whig perspectives. Scottish Enlightenment, and English common law. I almost said English breakfast tea. English common law and constitutional sources. This book's focus on the Bible's impact on the political and legal cultures of the American founding is not intended to discount, much less dismiss, other sources of influence or schools of thought that shaped the American experiment. Rather, it is my hope that casting a light on the Bible's often ignored place in late 18th century political and legal thought will provide a more complete picture of the ideas that contributed to the founding. Okay, we're at the bottom, page 18, and we just have maybe 2 paragraphs to go. "21st-century Americans are familiar with the Bible and less influenced by and articulate in discussing biblical ideas than their 17th and 18th century forebears. Insofar as early North American colonies were established to be Bible commonwealths and biblical language themes and principles pervaded 17th and 18th century political and legal thought, then that increasing unfamiliarity with the Bible, Wilson Carey McWilliams lamented, makes it harder and harder for Americans to understand their origins and their mores, or to put words to their experiences. Lacking knowledge of the Bible, Americans are likely to be literally inarticulate, unable to relate themselves to American life and culture as a whole." Well, that's pretty scary right there. Jeez. That's frightening. Okay. That was footnote 37. Let's take a look at that. He's got really long endnotes. Wow. I mean, there's a ton here, dude. You're not going to be disappointed. There's a lot to dig into if you want. A biblical literacy and awareness of the Bible's place in the culture of the American founding not only enriches one's understanding of the nation's history, but also provides insight into the identity of the American people and the values reflected in their system of civil government and laws. Knowledge of the Bible and its place in the American experience, in short, helps Americans better understand themselves and their history. Conversely, the increasing biblical illiteracy of the modern age almost inevitably distorts the conception Americans have of themselves as a people, the nation, and their political experiment in self-government. That is frightening. Twenty-first-century Americans are less familiar with the Bible and less influenced by and articulate in discussing biblical ideas than their 17th and 18th century forebears. Insofar as early North American colonies were established to be Bible commonwealths and biblical language, themes, and principles pervaded 17th and 18th century political and legal thought, then that increasing unfamiliarity with the Bible, Wilson Carey McWilliams lamented, makes it harder and harder for Americans to understand their origins and their mores, or to put words to their experiences. Lacking knowledge of the Bible, Americans are likely to be literally inarticulate, unable to relate themselves to American life and culture as a whole. Biblical literacy and awareness of the Bible's place in the culture of the American founding not only enriches one's understanding of the nation's history, but also provides insight into the identity of the American people and the values reflected in their systems of civil government and laws. Knowledge of the Bible and its place in the American experience, in short, helps Americans better understand themselves and their history. Happy Thanksgiving. Conversely, the increasing biblical illiteracy of the modern age almost inevitably distorts the conception Americans have of themselves as a people, the nation, and their political experiment in self-government. This is the last paragraph. This book reflects on selected biblical passages and themes found in the discourse of the founding era. It is not a systematic, comprehensive study of the Bible in the political theory and culture of this period in the nation's life. Nevertheless, I hope this book will open a window on the biblically literate culture of the founding era and promote an interest in the English Bible and its contributions to the founding of the American Republic. Go out and get a copy today. Daniel L. Dreisbach, Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers. We're almost done with the intro. The Bible was a vital source of ideas for Americans in this era, and these ideas informed their conceptions of law and civil government. The Bible, in short, provides insights into the grand American experiment in Republican self-government and liberty under law. Let's take a look at the table of contents before we finish for tonight. Part 1, Bible and Culture. We just read the introduction, Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers. Okay, here's Part 1, Bible and Culture. Chapter 2 is called The English Bible and American Public Culture. Chapter 3 is called The Bible in the Lives of the Founding Fathers. Chapter 4 is called The Bible in the Political Discourse of the American Founding. Part 2 is called The Bible in Discourse. Chapter 5, What does God require of us? Micah 6:8 in the literature of the American Founding. The Bible in American History, creating a great seal for the new nation. Chapter 6, A Defense of Liberty Against Tyrants. The Bible, the Right of Resistance, and the American Revolution. The Bible in American History, Benjamin Franklin's Call for Prayer in the Constitutional Convention. Chapter 7 is called The Exalted Nation, Proverbs 14:34, and the Characteristics of a Righteous People. The Bible in American History, the First Prayer in Congress. Chapter 8 is called When the Righteous Rule, Proverbs 29:2, and the Character of a Godly Magistrate. The Bible in American History, proclaim liberty throughout all the land. Chapter 9, Stand Fast in Liberty, the use and misuse of biblical symbols and rhetoric of liberty in the American Founding. The Bible in History, George Washington takes the presidential oath of office. And Chapter 10, and the final chapter, Under Our Own Vine and Fig Tree, creating an American metaphor for liberty in the new nation. Then there's an afterword, and there's an acknowledgments. Let's take a look at the acknowledgments really quick. This afterword would be interesting. Maybe it would have been good to do an afterword. It's got quite a few acknowledgments here. 3 pages. I like to see a rich set of acknowledgments. I love that. That's awesome. Okay, well, that's Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers, the introduction, table of contents by Daniel L. Dreisbach, Oxford University Press. And having met him myself and interacted with him on the podcast, I highly recommend you check out that episode from 3 years ago, Thanksgiving 2022. I also highly recommend the episode that we did with Brad Cummings, who is the editor of the Founders Bible, similar project. Similar topic. Lucas Morell's episode on Constitution Day 2022, Lincoln and the Founding, talking about slavery. And then, check out my episode that I did on biblical themes in Lincoln's second inaugural address to get you started. Thanks for joining me on The Republican Professor on Thanksgiving 2025 years after Jesus, 27 November 2025. It's a Thursday. It's approximately 7:20 p.m. and I'm in the backyard of my epistemology mentor, Dr. Doug Geivett. Been my mentor for nearly a quarter of a century. This is his property. We're house sitting. We've been house sitting for nearly that long, about 22 years. Like I said at the beginning, I was in this spa right over here 12 years ago, nearly to the day, when I got a call from the hospital in Colorado saying, hey, you might want to come out. A couple days later, my mom died. Day before Thanksgiving, 2013. It's been 12 years since I was right there getting that call. Well, I think it was the Sunday night, and then she died the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So this is what I think about when I sit back here, and it's 12 years ago, and it's like, well, that's the same as between first grade and 12th grade when I went into the Navy. Think about it. First grade to going in the Navy, the same amount of time as that. It's hard to believe. It's really hard to believe. It's amazing. Well, anyway, thanks for joining me on the Republican Professor podcast. I've been your host, Dr. Lucas J. Mather. Happy Thanksgiving. Take care.